So I've been asked about my use of story in RE, I suppose, and in the rest of the curriculum. And one of the books that I find really, really useful is C.S. Lewis's Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Now, one of the things that is so great about it, obviously it's a kind of allegory of the Christian story blended with mythology. So it kind of pulls children in, particularly the ones who love mythology and are kind of really interested in, your myths and legends unit that you'll probably do in year 5 or maybe in year 3. And so I absolutely love that, and I love how it brings the children into the book, because it is so exciting. Peter ends up getting given a sword and a shield, and of course he immediately kills a wolf. So it's wonderful. But there's so much that you can do in terms of RE just by looking at the spoiler alert here, but of course, Aslan going and dying, being sacrificed in the place, being an innocent sacrifice in the place of a sinner, as it were, and then coming back to life. And I think there's so many levels to it, obviously, but they're all accessible to children. And so we look at the 10 Commandments in RE in year 5 in my school, and we go from the 10 Commandments, we go then to the Sermon on the Mount, and within the Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, of course, it gives us this language that I found that we use, particularly this year, which is the idea of deep magic from the dawn of time, and then you get deeper magic from before the dawn of time. And so when we're looking at the 10 Commandments and we're thinking about the way that Jesus kind of reframes them in the Sermon on the Mount, when he says that you've heard the ancients say that thou shalt not kill, he says, I say unto you that you will be guilty before the court if you become angry with your brother. And in the lessons that we were doing with that, one of the children kind of volunteered that language. It was kind of like, oh, okay, so the 10 Commandments are like the deep magic, and then the Sermon on the Mount is kind of like the deeper magic, perhaps. And it was a great way of thinking about that. And so it gives you this kind of, you can access some really deep theological ideas with language that is completely understandable to children and isn't unnecessarily academic, and gives them a kind of meaningful way of reinterpreting the work that we look at. So yeah, it's wonderful, and I highly recommend it. And I think just looking at it, reading the story and then talking about the witch being that kind of symbol of evil, looking at Aslan as being the lion that is, I think the one thing that's most interesting, actually, we look at the story of when Jesus flips the tables in the temple, and of course Aslan is talked about as being a lion. The children ask, is he safe? And of course Mr. Beaver kind of laughs and says, of course he's not safe, but he's good. And I think that is something that's really interesting. And I think when you're talking about the kind of the character of God with children as well, we have this kind of idea of a very sort of cartoony Jesus, and you kind of forget the Old Testament God, and you forget the table flipper. You forget the guy that's actually quite strict in some ways. And I think the lion actually helps you to understand that. He's powerful, but his claws are velveted. And that's something that's really, again, so wonderfully interesting.